Hey, this is Cam. Welcome back to Enormity Updates. Decided to do a little skipperoo today, and we're skipping number 5 and 6 for now. I'm going to hop right into literal today updates, number 7, because I feel like it's the update that should have happened right at the beginning of the campaign, and it's a whole lot of really cool, useful things about not necessarily the gameplay loop, but more so like the lifetime of your playthrough of the game. And I feel like it's got a whole lot of really good details to share. And yeah, so we're going to get to those previously skipped updates probably tomorrow or something like that, and dive straight into this one. I did also catch a cold while traveling. I'm now 0 for 2 for illnesses, but this one isn't COVID, so that's something at least. So my voice is a little off, but that'll be why. And maybe for the third or fourth time, if things pan out, I'm going to be playing more of the Enormity demo on TTS tonight. So that's a plan, as long as my voice holds out and no other surprises happen. Anyways, let's dive right into the update here with Grand Progression Spotlight update number 7. Spacers, welcome back to another transmission from the Shepherd. As promised, today's update is all about one of the most requested topics of the campaign, progression. We've seen your questions, we've read your comments, and we're happy to finally share what we've been working on. But before that, we have a few smaller updates to share from the ITU front, because there's always more excitement on the horizon. Let's chart the course. Signal crossover, quick updates from Kingdoms Forlorn. Oh, that's a cool picture. This is actually a double update from ITU. If you're reading this, we've just released an update on Kingdoms Forlorn, our fantasy-themed project that's transitioning from development into production. In this update, there's the Tabletop Simulator mod and official rulebook. Very cool. I'm probably going to check that out, and I'll probably record it doing so as well, because I backed that, and then I canceled my pledge, and I still think it looks awesome. Just a little bit too chunky and too much time for me at this point in my life. But TTS for free? Yes, please. All right, so back to Enormity. So this is a new expansion. We're just going to gloss over this because it's just the audio, and we'll cover it in a future video. Again, it's just one of the spotlights where it covers like what's inside of it in the list and shows like a picture or two, and that's about it. So we'll skip right past. So that's an available add-on. Good stuff. Progression spotlights. Yes, the juicy good goods. The wait is over. It's time to talk progression. This is one of the most anticipated topics, and who better to guide you through it than Marcin himself? Take it away, Marcin. Hey, guys and gals. The update you've all been waiting for is here. The legendary spotlight about progression through Enormity. Let me just set your expectations to the correct level. It's not going to be as sexy as the Intruder one. You can't beat creature designs and miniatures with fancy words, but I will try nonetheless. Okay, ready? Let's go. Progression in Enormity is a very broad term, can be applied to various parts of the design, which we'll talk about today. In no particular order, you have narrative and custom campaign progression, which describes how you flow from one run to the other and what happens in between. You have character progression, which is the development of your spacer throughout the game. Intruder progression describes how intruders grow in power alongside you. Gear progression is how you keep up, and finally, map progression deals with how the map exploration ties everything together. Progression. Lots of stuff. So like all the core aspects of the game, basically. Big juicy update. Don't mind my big sip of tea here. So nice. Enormity is the most compact ITU game to date, but it may be the most ambitious one yet. They say that with every single game, and honestly, like it's pretty well true. Definitely true. Though Aeon Trespass 12 Sons of Heracles flirts with the idea of an open world, it is still delivered as discrete region maps, broken down with battles on a separate clash board. In Enormity, you have true continuity through the entire game, including exploration, firefights, and even downtime for character development. So that's cool. I don't know what I feel about that phrasing though, because like in the Sins of Heracles campaign, it's very much like it's advertised as true open world. So it's kind of what's the term for that? Not an oxymoron, but like a clashing of what they've said about their own stuff. I get what they're meaning though, because this is the same board that expands and changes based on your play, whereas that is like separate region maps. I get it, but I don't know how I feel about that wording. Anyways, very small gray. And just as I was hoping for, we get to see some more art in these updates too, which is fantastic. I love the use of color in this too. Like it could very easily just be a very drab, grim space image, but there's all of these kind of ruddy brown and reddy orangey tones, and then like the purples instead of the blacks on the edges. It's a beautiful piece of art. Campaign progression. If you've played any open world game, you know how hard it is to make a compelling narration within its framework. There are always problems with immediacy. The world needs saving, but let me explore this region for 20 hours. Skyrim for sure. And on the other hand, railroading, aka RDR mission structure. My assumption is RDR would be Red Dead Redemption, but correct me if I'm wrong. With Enormity, we wanted to create a sense of growing tension and immediacy, but leave the agency of the moment-to-moment gameplay and runs in the hands of players. These sensibilities are affected in the course deck, which is the main mechanic of progression. In story terms, the course deck represents the current course and final destination of the shepherd. A typical course deck consists of 15 core cards, 10 to 12 run cards, and 3 to 5 incursion cards. In gameplay terms, each run or incursion card represents one gameplay session, an extraction run, or a boss incursion. So one kind of thought here. So 3 to 5 incursion cards. Incursion cards are specifically the boss intruders, if I recall correctly. So I'm curious if that means you're probably going to be fighting maybe one unique boss and maybe one or two that might repeat at different levels, because they will very likely have different levels. But I could be wrong there too. It could just be different set ones based on the campaign you're playing as well. Okay. Course cards are further tiered into 3 parsecs, white, red, and black, representing you getting further away from your origin point and into the void. As you might have guessed, the later the parsecs, the more difficult the game becomes. So fun kind of color coding there with like the timeline track when you're playing too. Usually, course cards are not shuffled, but stacked on top of each other. The Dark Side of the Sun, our baseline campaign, is made of 12 cards, 8 to 9 runs, and 3 to 4 incursions, stacked parsec by parsec, with boss incursion usually ending a parsec, as a sort of proficiency check for veteran player modes, and a gatekeeper for normal player modes. Very cool. The most important thing course cards tell you is if you have to go on an extraction run or have a boss incursion. Sometimes these will specify exactly what type of run to go to or which location to visit. Other times it'll be up to you, which is pretty sweet. In normal story difficulty game, you can always go on additional extraction runs to buff up your spacers and their arsenal. On veteran classic difficulty, the shepherd always moves forward, each run and incursion card bringing you one inch closer to the end. Once you resolve the final run or incursion from your final course card, your campaign will be over. So I'll probably be playing on story, and I'm probably just going to treat it like the veteran and not go on the extra stuff, just because I don't like the idea of farming in games. I have limited time to play games, and I don't want to farm for stuff. I say that now, who knows, maybe there's a bunch of emergent secrets that'll be really engaging, but the idea of it doesn't really engage me too much. The second, more important thing course cards tell you is everything else. They contain initial and optional campaign objectives. They unlock new locations on the shepherd via the intra-tram system. They introduce new rules, lasting game effects, and additional distraction, including free runs, which allow you to cheat a bit and go on additional supply runs. So again, supply runs don't really spark joy in me personally. Simple? Simple. Another art, and again, great use of colors. There's that gray, but kind of with a bit more brown tone, and then red involved too. Very cool. Great, because the course cards are much more than a simple timeline of runs and incursions. In fact, I've lied to you, as there are actually 3 types of course cards, 2 of which you've already been introduced to: run cards, which allow you to go on extraction runs, and incursion cards, which force you to battle a fearsome intruder boss for your right to stay on the shepherd. There's the 3rd type of course card, which gets added to the deck from various sources: special campaign setups, story passages, various events, discoveries, even critical wounds. Yay, critical wound, doing fun stuff. The Enormity Mythos cards. Mythos cards move your current narrative campaign or the setting's meta-narrative forward, reveal setting secrets, and challenge your characters in a myriad of ways. Many Mythos cards seed Mythos cycles, which are sequences of interconnected Mythos cards and Mythos book paragraphs. Think of them as side quests, loyalty missions, secret quests, and more. Very cool. Loyalty missions sounds like a lot of fun as well. Thinking of games like Mass Effect, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of similar to that. This video might be a little bit longer too, but one thing, because this is a big update, 2, I need my tea. Furthermore, the course of the ship is set at the start of the campaign, but you may influence it, sometimes adding or subtracting course cards. In a narrative campaign, part of your course card is special, tailor-made for the story you're living through, with unique rules and interactions. In a narrative campaign, you may be urged to move to a certain part of the ship, but you still retain a great deal of autonomy on how to get there, and where to go during the less critical missions. In other words, Even in the highly narrative campaigns, you retain agency, and no two campaigns will progress in the same way. That's pretty cool. So one thing I've talked about with some other games is like the illusion of choice. And while I'm sure it exists in Aeon Trespass, it's something that I really haven't noticed at all. And when they say that that's going to be the case, that they won't progress the same way, and just given like the scope of how giant the ship is with the maps and such, I want to believe them, that's for sure. After each run or incursion, you have downtime phase in a safe house location that deals with crafting, technology, character development, and more, which I'll talk about below. Once you're done, you reveal the next course card. So it's like working your way through the deck. Kind of reminds me of like Kingdom Death campaigns, how you go Lanterneer to Lanterneer, kind of, just for the deck instead of just going through the sheet. I guess you could say the same about the ATO campaigns though too. Another cool piece of artwork, lots and lots of shipping crates. Custom campaigns. Course cards are used to measure runs remaining until the end of the campaign, as well as to introduce new rules, discoveries, enemies, locations, and more. The deck is highly customizable to make the game easier, harder, or just to introduce expansions. It is also perfect to run custom campaigns. In a custom campaign, you can use universal course cards, while any campaign-specific cards are placed in the game box. The course deck is normally made out of 15 cards, called a campaign, but in a custom campaign, it can be of any length as long as you have enough cards. A short campaign may be 10 cards long, 1, Parsec 1, and 2, while long ones can be 20 plus cards. Generally, the more cards in a given parsec, the easier the game will become over time due to the accretion of gear and experience. We suggest playing long custom campaigns on veteran mode. However, I've lied to you twice. I told you there are 3 parsecs. Well, in fact, there's more. Let's collectively call them endgame parsecs. That's right. You can, after you're done with the 3 normal parsecs, which for the easier intruders span levels 1 to 4, there's a whole other realm of difficulty waiting for you with levels 5 to 9. As well as level 4 or even 3 of the most powerful beings in the universe. So just a comment there, it's something that we haven't explored yet. We might in the future, especially after a comment from a recent video, which I still need to respond to, and we'll do that while this video is uploading, about, what's it called? The Nestus Theater, which is basically, I think like Cerebro from X-Men, where you can fight extra challenging difficulty versions of the foes you've bested previously. So similar vibe, just making it your own story. And one of the things that I like about this too is for any of like the more creative inclined people, you could totally create your own story to go along with it, because it's basically you've got all of the game, you've got all the framework, you've got generic cards to plot out the campaign, and there's nothing stopping people from creating their own stories to go along with these custom campaigns, which is really neat. Okay. Being freed from the shackles of a narrative does not mean you were aimless. You still have some general objectives, and your course deck can and will still include Enormity Mythos cards, secrets you can find which persist into other campaigns. In other words, custom campaigns are not devoid of storytelling, especially that of the environmental and emergent kind, but they flow at a more steady pace, with more focus put on pure exploration and survival and the challenge of intruders' ever-increasing power. More Elden Ring in space than Dead Space. Which is pretty cool, and I think that's a really, really apt comparison. I've never played Elden Ring, but I got super into a couple YouTube channels that I'd watch on my lunch break that would like deep dive into the lore of the world and the game and such, which is super in-depth and all very much contact clues that you just have to piece together. It's pretty wild. So this wouldn't be quite as pieced together. Like this would still be things that strip fed to you and emergent storytelling and such. But yeah, I like that comparison. Both narrative and custom campaigns make good use of matrix codes and code names, which are used to trigger various story events and story chains. Cool. Jamek Tech Suit. It's a pretty sweet looking suit as well. And once again, sculpt's looking really good too. So here's a good example of, so generally when you start off in the game, you're gonna be able to wield 2 arms worth of stuff. So most rifles require 2 hands to be able to wield. Or you could have a pistol and a melee weapon, as in another example. However, in this case, you can probably have 3 hands worth of gear, which is something we've experienced in Aeon Trespass 2, which is pretty sweet. And especially because I am very certain, that's just a sweet little angle there, like the angle of the pistol there as well, that's sweet. Cool backpack. The floor looks a little Lego-y, but I'm here for it, that's cool. That might be work in progress still, just by looking at it. And it looks like there's some shell casings or something on the ground, which might be a little clipped there. Yeah, that's probably still work in progress. But yeah, did I say that? I can't remember. in Aeon Trespass, there's definitely weapons or items that require 3 hands to wield, and I'm sure that'll be the case here. Okay, onwards to character progression. Character progression in Enormity is rich and multi-layered, focusing on several distinct spheres: gear, suits, specialization, experience, and your expedition scale. These allow for a near-endless build variety. We'll talk about gear in a sec. Suits represent milestone advancements as they provide a variety of increases for your Rubicon stat line, spacer tokens, skills, and most importantly, new action cards. You can salvage, loot, or craft suits based on recovered technology. Like gear, spoilers, suits are interchangeable between characters during the downtime phase. There is no forced player possession here. Experience. Who doesn't like to gain experience? Your spacers do. Generally, you'll gain 1 experience point per successful extraction run or incursion. On the back of each character/specialization card, you'll find a sprawling progression tree. Advancing a node usually costs 1 XP. To keep it simple, though, some juicy upgrades require 2+. You note your experience nodes on a small spacer sheet. What can you expect from those nodes? Well, there are skill nodes, ability nodes, auto bonus nodes, slot nodes, synergy nodes, action nodes, antinomy nodes, specialization nodes, and yes, other nodes for the most special enhancements. So just going on what they've kind of used of other and like darkness and stuff, I'm curious if other is probably to do with some really weird alien stuff, because I think antinomy might be to do with like more space magic, for lack of better words. Okay, specializations. We've talked about them a bit. These are those expensive 2+ XP nodes. Specializations represent your character's particular professions, proficiencies, and ship stations. The Enormity demo has 5 pre-generated named characters with fixed careers belonging to one of the 4 major divisions, while the full game will include additional rules and components to chart your career across several positions and specializations. Specializations are tied to characters, so when a character dies, so does this character's progression. So one note there, I still would love the idea of an android specialization, and it could totally be tied into the character story, as they didn't know they were an android until discovering it about themselves, and it could be an interesting story piece. And then it probably have very interesting interplay mechanics with the fungi that's been mentioned that does things to AI too. And to character death, as I mentioned in a previous update, Enormity uses a body sleeve system to circumvent all that dying business with a meta solution. Simply put, both gameplay and the narrative support the idea of spacer lives. In Enormity, your spacer can die. Duh. When that happens, they eject a consciousness black box. This black box is then used to 3D bioprint a new body for you in the EPR, Emergency Printer Room. You can do it as many times as you want, provided you have enough biofilament for the printer. On normal difficulty, you have plenty of filament. On veteran, not so much. Maybe there's some more aboard the Shepherd. Otherwise, sooner or later, you will run out and face the horrifying possibility of true death. So, this game does seem much more character-focused than Aeon Trespass, but less so than Kingdoms Forlorn. In Aeon Trespass, the characters that you play as are kind of side characters as you go through, like, they're present, but they're not, like, the focus of the overarching narrative that you're playing through. And they're not the things that you actually fight with. You junction with the Titans, kind of like Pacific Rim. And Kingdoms Forlorn, you play through a Nightbook story where it's not fail forward, but no matter the outcome, you gain benefits and negatives depending on how things go, and your knight seems to not being able to perma-die, because that would cut their story short, and the whole thing is about their story. This seems more like a middle ground. In ATO, we have had a few true character deaths, rather than just like the Titans that they were junctioned with. We've had opportunity for it, I think 2 or 3 times. It's only happened once, and the characters have left in by other means too, which were really rewarding and really cool as well. So while spacers may die often, I think true death will be a rarity unless you're in a really, really bad spot in this game on veteran mode, is my assumption. I'm also really curious about how the character stories will be as well. Okay. Specializations change your whole character card, offering a new Rubicon stat line, new abilities, new skill bonuses, action cards, and so on. They also come with their own progression tree. Finally, there is the mission scale, sometimes called a nano Kardashev, a kind of worldwide or campaign-wide experience players accumulate while playing in a persistent world. This progression involves knowledge of secrets, shortcuts, lore, and alien technology, and provides benefits to any character within the current campaign. And in the case of stickers, persistent advancement throughout all of your campaigns, and is based on collecting research points. These may include new antinomy cards, new stratagems, new tech station schematics, and new save house stations that grant you access to additional metagame options like scouting, forward positioning, or new side mission types. Finally, I said finally? Well, I lied again. I mentioned you'll use a smaller spacer sheet to track your character's career. It will include all sorts of information like a character name, player name, skill bonuses, and auto bonuses. It will also include more ominously sounding progression paths, a sanity track, a transcendence track, and an inner dark track. That's right. So whatever those things are, that sounds pretty cool. Also, the sketches of suits look awesome. It kind of gives me like vibes of the big Fallout suits, just mixed with space. I think this one might be my favorite. It kind of gives me the most Fallout vibe too. Oh, they are really cool though, but yeah, I think that one would be my favorite. Bulwark suit concept. Okay, intruder progression. Not tired yet? I am very tired. We passed the 2,000 word mark by now, and we still have some ways to go. Intruder progression is the most straightforward of the bunch. Each baseline intruder and boss intruder have levels 1 to 9, progressively more difficult. As our returning backers know, we don't settle for stat boosts and add new and unique traits to each level, so that fighting against a higher level creature becomes a completely new experience, requiring new tactics and new weapons. Yep, it's the name of the game for them is escalation, and while fighting a new higher tier enemy can be confusing sometimes, as you need to remember all the different things and everything that you've built upon before, it's pretty cool. Big fan of it for sure. Intruder levels are not tied to parsecs, but to runs and incursions, although in normal mode, you can halt that progression by going on the aforementioned loot/XP runs. Again, not a fan of that personally, although it's cool that it's an option. Also, of note is that intruder levels are not equal. In other words, a level 1 Mothman and a level 1 Conductor share exactly one thing, the number 1. In actual power, a level 1 Conductor is somewhere between levels 3 and 4 of the Mothman. And yes, it goes all the way to 9. So my assumption is 9, anything probably 5 plus. Is going to be in like the extra difficult mode, and levels 1 to 3 would probably be available in like the normal story or whatever. And just as a comparison piece for the Mothman, or for the Conductor equaling level 3 or 4 of the Mothman, Mothman is a boss in the very first story. Conductor is a boss potentially in the 4th one of the main campaign, but again, like the main campaigns except the first are kind of interchangeable. But I do think it is supposed to be one of the more difficult ones. Each baseline intruder also has a few unique specimens, and the frequency of their appearance can really swing the difficulty pendulum. So that's the main curve. Besides that, we have the variants, which are usually harder versions of a particular baseline or boss intruder. There we go, so that's cool. So there are base variants of bosses too. These are either discrete or secret versions hidden somewhere around the shepherd. They're level fixed, or they can scale just as well as their basic versions. So just a thought, so a variant and secrets hidden somewhere in the shepherd. Considering that we're getting 2 versions of the Mothman, and the Mothman has clearly more story to tell in other tales, I won't be surprised if there's a fight in which you have to face off against 2 Mothman, ergo having the 2 minis that look different too. That's just my thought. Would not be surprised if it happens. But yeah, we'll see. That's going to be a long ways off, but that's what I'm guessing. Okay. Cool. Finally, there is intruder knowledge. As you fight a certain type of intruder, you will get intimately acquainted, learn its quirks and patterns, and gain some bonuses against it. However, this is a two-way relationship. If your enemy is smart, they will learn your patterns too and adapt to them, becoming more deadly. And if they are smarter, ... So some cool sketches here. Whatever this creature is, I think it's really cool. Kind of gives me like a totemic Wendigo vibe. And I love that it's got like a giant cannon on its back too, which is really neat. Yeah, creepy critter. I'm a fan. Whatever it is, my assumption is it's not in the base game though. Gear progression. Okay. It wouldn't be a crawler without gear. Gear is all the equipment and weapons you find during your extraction runs, loot from bosses, craft at a tech station, or gain in another a variety of more or less esoteric ways. There's 300 plus gear in the core game alone. Gear progression is tied to parsecs, locations, intruders, story events, and technology breakthroughs, so you are free to explore different avenues of the sprawling weapon tree, and I can still guarantee you won't see everything in several campaigns, not even long custom ones. The most common source of gear are the caches you find during runs. They yield a random item from the current biome/zone pool, A zone covers several locations connected by a theme or purpose, with rarer loot being represented by one card. From ATO and Cycle 1, like there's so many cool, unique gear cards that you can find, and they're so thematic and fun. The loot pools get refreshed when passing into a new parsec, so there is always a reason to backtrack to a previous section. The other source of gear, and one that you can't control, is crafting during the downtime phase. Simply put, your safe house has some basic tech stations with basic schematics. These allow you to reforge looted gear into something new and better. That's nice. So in Kingdom Death, as a comparison, I don't know if this changed in the Gambler's Chest, but once you build gear in the base game, there's no way to get your base components back at all, and then you just end up with a bunch of gear that you aren't ever going to use again. So I like that this is the case here. And I think it's actually the case with Aeon Trespass too. Like I don't think you can do anything with like the giant stockpile of gear you end up getting. Okay. Where did I get to? Incomes or resources gained from runs, and they differ from zone to zone. You gain new schematic databases, recipes from the story, from bosses, and through scavenging. The most powerful schematics are those for new suits. Though suits are not gear, I decided to talk about this feature here because it ties heavily into the Engram loop. When you gain access to new suits, it's either a single suit, a schematic for a suit, or a suit bay. Suit bays give you unlimited access to a given suit. On the other hand, a single suit is just that. If you die wearing it, there is a chance that you cannot retrieve it and lose it forever. I like that it's a chance rather than a guarantee. That's cool. It seems suits are harder to replace than your biological sleeves. A happy medium is suit schematics. You gain access to crafting processes and can create as many as you wish as long as you have the resources for it. You are still limited to the number of suits you can field for the number of cards in the game. So keep in mind, I think most suits and stuff comes with 1 to 2 copies. Maybe 2 to 4 in some cases, but that's the reason why they offered the add-on of the extra gear too. As a novum for our gear games, gear is perishable. No, don't go away. You're simply limited by the size of your upgradable stash and need to decide what to keep and what to recycle for additional resources. And there are ways to safeguard your most precious possessions. Don't worry. Also, gear is interchangeable between characters, not locked in. So yeah, that's good. In ATO, same kind of idea. Like there are some ways that you can break or have your gear busted during fights and different such. It's rare, but it can happen, which is a good stressor for sure. Post-game assaults. So for any folks wondering about like what some of the crazier spacers are going to look like for the minis, I think this is a great example. We got kind of like over here looks very much kind of like Eldar meets Tyranid going for maybe what's this, Protoss? Yeah, a little Protoss-y. We'll say Protoss from StarCraft. Dude in the middle with the sword. Awesome to see that there is going to be some sort of melee option available. He actually kind of gives me a bit Gundam vibes. This guy does kind of give me Terran gunslinger vibes also from StarCraft. And then cool space magic jet Iron Man dude. So there's going to be some zany suits in the game for sure, especially just looking at the minis and ATO. One thing I really like too, and I think I mentioned this before, so for all of the ATO boss art, it's all actually arts of what the playtesters were using in specifically fun thematic fights. So there's a good chance that that's what this is as well, where this group of 4 spacers and their current load up of golden glowy sword, laser palms, purple beam hand cannon, and crazy bio rifle thing were what they were using in this certainly epic playtest against the Conductor and the Grin. That one was kind of funny there, but yeah, cool. Onwards we go. Alrighty, map progression. Finally, we arrive at the Shepherd's Map, the piece that ties the whole thing together. We've made a big deal out of the open world aspect of the game, of the free-flowing nature of the exploration going from location to location across 2 interchangeable books, but it truly is a game changer. Let me reiterate what you can already read on the main page. There is only one board, that of the mysterious starship itself. This board is made of unique handcrafted locations that sprawl into a near infinite maze of interconnected sections, hidden passages, shortcuts, and arenas. Even your downtime, the part of the game where you develop your characters, craft gear, and make startling technological breakthroughs, happens on that very same board, in safehouse-type locations with your actions and opportunities reflected by the equipment provided within, right there on the board page. Each location in Enormity belongs to a biome/zone, a region of several map pages that shares common elements like intruder ecology, which intruders you'll most likely to meet there, environmental hazards, and additional rules like lack of gravity or oxygen. yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, how different zones will have different kind of effects in play and such. And I'll be really curious how they what their ruling is and how lack of gravity or oxygen work, as well as unique engrams/resources. And there is, of course, the gear loot deck. Each of the Shepherd's zones has one. The loot deck contains items unique to this part of the ship. So one thing with unique engrams/resources is engrams you carry with you, and I assume just for the specific run you're on, and then you can cash them in for resources. So okay, maybe that's not too bad. My thought process was like, what if you got a whole bunch of engrams from different zones and where you are now, and you need to flip through different books to figure out what they are, but that might not be an issue. Okay. The loot deck contains unique items to this part of the ship. Good stuff. As you move from location to location, you unlock new extraction points, which later double as insertion points, where you can start a new run. This way, you're creating an intra-tram fast travel system across the ship. It'd be horrible if that went out at some point. So that's going to happen for sure. Some locations are the lair of a particular boss. Sometimes the narrative will lead you straight up their doorstep, as it does in the TTS demo. Other times you may stumble in there unknowingly. Sometimes you'll get lucky and the occupant won't be home. Sometimes you will have to play an impromptu lair incursion. Oftentimes you will be unprepared, but that's the risk you are running, scavenging a mysterious, long-lost vessel. And speaking of moving across locations, sometimes your current course card will tell you where to go, especially if it's a heavily narrative-themed gaming moment. But most of the time, you're free to go wherever your danger sense takes you. This means that your adventure on board the Shepherd will be different from other players, different location, different intruders, different gear, and weapons. Finally, and this is the finally of this update, locations are tiered by their difficulty. The deeper you go on the ship, the more dark and transformed your surroundings will become. The higher the difficulty of the local intruder, and the greater the chance at good loot, at the price of death. There's a great intersection here between parsec system and the location system, working in tandem to adjust the game's overall difficulty to both the time and place you find yourselves in. More fantastic art. Big fan of the art for this so far. Expansion progression. Okay. Of course, a final lie. That was not the last paragraph. This one will be short though, I promise. Expansion narrative campaigns follow the same progression as the core game and incorporate some of its locations and intruders, sometimes in a new light, sometimes in new levels, to keep a high variety of experience. This works the other way around too. Practically all expansion content, save for the actual narrative, can be readily used in your custom campaigns, as locations and their ecologies seamlessly connect to the main, and that includes the away missions on alien planets. Looking forward to an update on that. If you've taken all that for granted, try this. Due to how your progression through locations work, i.e. that you are usually free to choose where to go, even within a narrative campaign, the expansion content may also appear in your core game campaigns, which is pretty sweet. Very, very modular. Phew, that's it. That's Enormity's progression summed up and abridged. I am totally spent and will go to bed now, regardless of the hour. Maria, take it away. And I do believe that, well, that's actually it for today's Spacers. And yeah, so I'm stoked on this update. I feel like this is like the bread and butter of big, detailed, full ITU updates. And I'm really stoked that this update happened because I feel like this is what the campaign was missing so far, was like, what would be the term for it? If all of the other updates are kind of almost like filler by comparison without getting into too much detail, this was like eating a big pot of stew. Anyways, I'm very tired. I'm a little bit sick and not very verbally literate, we'll say. But yeah, so everything else I want to say, I think that's about it. Any questions on this update or any questions on the game, thoughts and feelings, would love to hear it too. And we'll jump into the other updates that we skipped ahead for this one in the future. But just figured it'd be good to record a video of this one for anyone who was kind of curious about the game and on the fence. This one might be a much better kind of gauge of what playing through the game is going to be like. So yeah, much love. Ta-ta for now, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.